Some Democratic lawmakers tonight are bringing Americans impacted by President Trump's immigration crackdown as their State of the Union guests. Among them, Aliyah Rahman, a U.S. citizen, in this shocking video. It shows her being violently dragged from her car by ICE agents in Minneapolis. She will be with Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who is one of the few progressive Democrats attending tonight's address. Aliyah Rahman and Congresswoman Ilhan Omar join me now. I want to thank you both very much for being here. Aliyah, you went from just living your life to tonight going into one of the most storied places in America, but face to face with the man whose policies have upended your life. Can I just ask how you're doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for asking that question. You know, I have spent the last month learning the names of the tendons in my shoulder, because both of my shoulders are torn, cartilage and tendon, right? But what I haven't learned is the names of the people who did this to me, and that's really challenging. But honestly, the thing that I'm far more concerned about than myself is that this is an ongoing fear and threat for people around this country. What happened to me is absolutely not new in the history of this country, and we have not seen accountability that gives me any reason to believe this won't be done to somebody else. So that's what I'm thinking about today. And honestly, I'm glad that it's me sitting in that seat rather than somebody who's cheering for what happened to me.
So, Congresswoman, why is it important for you to invite people like Aliyah, to give them a forum, essentially? A lot of the attention has gone away, given that some of the folks who have been doing this have left Minneapolis, have left your state. Why did you make this decision?
Well, thank you so much for having us. I'm really grateful to Aliyah and others who have been sharing their stories. One of the things that we know is that the occupation that we experienced in Minnesota was a very harmful, terrorizing occupation. It harmed so many people. It obviously took the lives of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. But there's so many people who are alive, who have to live with the damages that this administration has caused in Minnesota. So it's really important to the Minnesota Democratic delegation to keep these stories alive, to bring guests that speak to what the ICE occupation has meant for our constituents and the real harm that this administration has caused. Even though they promised to create safety in our communities, they've created chaos, violence, and terror.
So when you think about that chaos and violence and terror, Aliyah, I wonder if you had the opportunity, what you would say to the president, or what you would say to the scores of members of Congress who will be sitting there who support his policies.
Yeah, you know, I'm a software engineer, right? My whole life has been about how do we solve really concrete problems. And I think I would say to them that they were elected to come up with policies and ways to govern this country that make people's lives better, right? They were not elected to point at folks they would like to construct as enemies so they don't have to do their jobs. This is a really solvable problem. And I think like this country is far past due a reckoning and a commitment around what we allow people who say they are law enforcement to do to other human beings. You mentioned don't have to believe me to know what you want around that, right?
You mentioned the physical problems that you are continuing to have because of what happened to you. But how are you doing emotionally, and where do you find the strength, frankly, to come out and be a part of this activism tonight?
I almost don't feel like it was a choice because I'm just so painfully aware that what happened to me is a very common experience in this country, except for the part where I got out and I got to come back to my community. And honestly, the emotional toll of it is the reason that I think it's still important to come be in front of people who are happy this happened to me or think I deserve worse or who write hit pieces saying that they hope it hurt. because I wake up at 3 a.m., somewhere between 3 and 4 every day, and I see the faces of the people inside the Whipple Center. You know, most folks saw this video of me out on the street, and that is not what I think about when I think about the worst part of that day. It is what was happening to folks inside, and the kind of cruelty that you see inflicted. And what I saw was like chained together lines of black and brown people. And I am waking up every day with the knowledge that the folks who did that and who exclusively referred to me and others as bodies, not people, citizen, immigrant, none of that, bodies, that these folks are looking to buy giant warehouses around the country. But you ask me how I find strength, guess what? In lots of tiny towns around this country, people have said, we are not going to allow this. People have built barricades of humanity against the purchasing of those facilities. And I'm so proud of people who are doing that, because all you have to do is make a phone call to your leader and say, what if they come near here? What should we do then? Help me make a plan. That's what we got going out on here. And frankly, I have studied civil rights work in this country for a long time. It's not hard to be strong when you know what you come after.
In fact, Congresswoman Aaliyah mentioned the many places across America where they're looking to have more detention centers. And now an ICE whistleblower says the agency's training for new officers has been pared down to the point where it is, and I'm quoting, deficient, defective, and broken. You've called to abolish ICE. A lot of folks think that is highly unlikely. I wonder if you ever feel largely powerless to stop the mistreatment of deportees as someone in the congressional minority.
No, I think it's important for us to understand that ICE is a new creation. It was formed post 9/11, and it replaced an agency called INS. And I think it is doable for us to abolish ICE and to go back to the drawing board to figure out how do we enforce our immigration laws, but do it in a humane and a dignified way. It is not okay, as Aaliyah was saying, for us to accept that law enforcement comes with inhuman treatment in the way in which we've seen ICE carry out their mission. And I do believe that Americans across the country are understanding that when the president and Kristi Noem say they are looking for the worst of the worst, the results have been that they have come after Americans just going about their daily lives. And those are the ones who've been terrorized. Those are the ones that have been killed in broad daylight. And it is not a justifiable thing for us to allow. And I do believe that my colleagues are seeing the writing on the wall, that this policy that the Trump administration is carrying out is not one that is sustainable. And we're going to see that play out in the midterms when the Democrats win the House and possibly the Senate.
You know, Congresswoman, that there are a number of your Democratic colleagues who have chosen to skip tonight's speech. Did you think about that, and why did you make the decision you did?
I have attended every State of the Union since I've been in Congress. I think it is important in the People's House, those that serve in the House are present and are holding ground there. I also think for us Minnesotans, it was important for us to bring our constituents to bear witness and to give their testimony and to be able to stand in the face of the lies that we know that the president is going to tell, because we know that his immigration policies hasn't made Americans safe. We know that his economic policies have devastated communities, and we know that there is nothing really going right about this administration. And even when we think about the Epstein files being released and getting justice for the survivors, he has been the leader of the Pedophile Protection Party. And for us to be here with people who have been harmed by this president and his presidency and his policies, it's a really important piece of the work that we get to do as members of Congress.
Aaliyah Rahman and Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, I thank you so much, both of you, for your time.
Thank you for having us.